almost every month. I guess I do change every month because there's so many changes that are happening. We're going to hit the latest and the greatest, all the changes that are happening, what you need to do. If no one has ever taken a look at your loan, the one thing that we offer is one comprehensive loan review. So if you have never taken advantage of that service, I would tell you that this is a great time to do it. You will see a QR code on every slide. Just use your camera, takes you right to our advisory link. And Erin will talk throughout the program about what an advisory review looks like. But that question always comes up, so I'm going to get it out of the way up front. And with that, Erin, take it away.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. As Beth mentioned, I'm Aaron Longino with Thrive Student Loan Advisors. So today we'll speak about all things student loan related. We'll try to hit on everything that's been in the news recently. We won't try, we definitely will, including the changes from the recent budget bill, how it affects you as the borrower, briefly on the government shutdown and how that would affect federal borrowers. We'll speak about the income-driven repayment plans that's really a part of the recent passage of the budget bill. And we'll try to emphasize some things about student loan forgiveness, public service loan forgiveness, buyback, all things forgiveness related, the things that are staying, the things that are going away, and what it is we're able to do to help.
All right, so I think this is probably the record time of questions coming in, but I apologize that I didn't mention this. So if you are on this webinar, that means you have been invited by your employer or by your advisor. And not only are our monthly webinars open to, but also loan reviews are open to you and your family. So if you have children who have student loans, if you have a parent who have Parent Plus loans, you are all welcome. Just let our advisor know who your employer is. But absolutely, one person in a family's loan really affects the whole family. So absolutely, you are eligible for loan review for anybody in your family.
So the recent budget bill that passed kind of overhauled student loan programs. One of the positive things that it did was it made the tax-free employer repayment permanent. It'll permanently be tax-free, where employers are able to help their employees pay down their student loan debt. It's an extraordinarily useful tool, especially at a time when student loan debt is exploding. Also, the transition from the SAVE plan, really all qualified plans, to the newly created WRAP plan. SAVE and also the next one, Parent Plus loan overhaul. These are two things that have been keeping me up at night as it relates to federal student loans. The changes that were made, we'll get into those relatively soon. And also the normal consolidation and clarification on student loan forgiveness programs. Recently, both houses of Congress passed and was signed into law the recent budget bill. But before that, June 18th of 2024, the SAVE plan, which was in my opinion, the best option for repayment of student loans for most borrowers. It was created by the previous administration. It calculated what's called discretionary income in a way where student loan payments were affordable for most Americans. They became 5% of discretionary income. July 18th of 2024, the courts threw that plan out. They said the Department of Education cannot unilaterally supersede the will of Congress. Congress created student loan forgiveness. Congress created the qualified plan, or the original qualified plan for student loan forgiveness, and how that plan is calculated, as I mentioned, by what the IRS calls discretionary income. SAVE recalculated that, and the court said they can't overstep Congress. So the SAVE plan was thrown out over a year ago, July 18th, 2024. But it had a trickle-down effect, if you will. Because of that, there are other qualified plans that offer student loan forgiveness either sooner, or the fact that the Department of Education created these plans with the ability to forgive loans. So because of that trickle-down effect, the court said the rest of those qualified plans can no longer forgive student loans either, which affected every borrower who's on the road to student loan forgiveness. So the budget bill got rid of all the qualified plans, whether it's for student loan forgiveness or more specifically, public service loan forgiveness. And they created a RAP plan as the new qualified plan, which by all expert accounts, the RAP plan will not be as favorable to borrowers. They are currently, right now as we speak, in the process of phasing out the qualified plans for forgiveness. For those that do not qualify for student loan forgiveness, this does something extra as well. Student loan forgiveness, which normally comes after you've made either 240 or 300 consecutive payments, depending on when your loans were dispersed. That's either 20 or a 25-year repayment, at the end of which everything that's left would be forgiven. The RAP plan will extend that to a 30-year repayment. So student loan forgiveness for those who don't act now will no longer come after 20 or possibly 25 years for those with grad loans and loans with a certain disbursement date. It'll now be a 30-year repayment, 10 years extra interest accruing, 10 extra years of monthly payments. That's what, 120 extra payments before the possibility of forgiveness. Don't be caught in this transition. Safeguard yourself if forgiveness is your goal to a 20-year repayment unless you qualify for public service loan forgiveness. Parent Plus loans. This affects me personally. My oldest daughter is in college and I have Parent Plus loans for her. So Parent Plus loans on their own, they don't qualify for forgiveness. They don't qualify for student loan forgiveness. They don't qualify for public service loan forgiveness, but they can be made to qualify. Once they're made to qualify, they can be enrolled into a qualified plan and therefore enrolled in the student loan forgiveness or public service loan forgiveness, depending on what you as the borrower qualify for. Once the RAP plan becomes the only option for qualified payments, Parent Plus loans will no longer qualify for student loan forgiveness at all. They won't be able to be made to qualify because they won't qualify for the RAP plan. The RAP plan specifically excludes Parent Plus loans when parents were already had the short end of the stick where student loan forgiveness was concerned. The plan that Parent Plus loans were able to go into once they were made to qualify is 20% of discretionary income. It's actually the highest or most expensive qualified plan as far as the calculation of discretionary income goes. Once the RAP plan is fully in effect, that'll no longer be the case. Parent Plus loans will no longer be able to qualify for forgiveness. Even if you already have qualified time, but you're not in the right plan, when the RAP plan becomes the only option, all that qualified time you've already accrued will be lost. As I mentioned before, qualified plans, they're calculated using what the IRS calls discretionary income. They take what you make in a year, your adjusted gross income, plus your family size, the difference between that and 150% of the poverty line in your state. They divide it by 12. That number is your discretionary income. The plans are between 10 and 20% of that number. The RAP plan won't use discretionary income at all. Just by the calculation in and of itself, payments are expected to be significantly higher. You're muted.
Just saw that come up. If I'm already in the SAVE plan, what happens if I don't take action? Will I automatically move into RAP or will I lose my progress?
So let's talk about this. This is the second part of what's keeping me up at night besides Parent Plus loans. So there are currently around 7 million borrowers in a RAP forbearance. I'm using air quotes and I'll explain why. So when the court said July 18th of 2024 that the RAP plan was unconstitutional, that means it no longer was a plan, let alone a qualified plan. It's not a qualified plan. This means a number of things. This means you're kind of in student loan limbo. You're not actually in a repayment plan. The Department of Education cannot calculate a payment for SAVE. They cannot accept a payment for SAVE. They cannot apply a payment for SAVE. So essentially, your servicer has already allowed you to waste almost a year and a half of qualified time. 98% of people that actually qualify for these programs, they never get it. Qualified time is hard enough to get without your servicer allowing you to lose a year, almost a year and a half of qualified time for no reason at all, when you could have safeguarded yourself against missing that time. We've been switching our clients out of SAVE since August of 2024, so they can still be on a road to forgiveness. Not only that, interest has begun accruing by some accounts as much as between $150 and $275 a month. And to answer your question directly, originally they said you'll be moved into the RAP plan. Now it's been updated. They're actually going to move you into a standard repayment. That'll be one of two, the only two options there are for student loan repayment. You'll be moved into a non-qualified plan. So if you're not someone that's in the know and you think your plan changed, your payments went up because of the changes in a budget bill, you're doing the responsible thing, you're making your monthly payments full and on time, but you're not in a qualified plan. So none of those payments have counted towards the forgiveness of your loans. You've essentially, if you forgive the expression, just thrown good money after bad. I would advise moving out of the SAVE plan sooner rather than later, so you have a choice as to what you choose. Parent Plus loans. So Parent Plus loans are the loans you take out for the education of your child. When a parent's only goal is to not allow their children to go into debt to educate themselves. On average, for a 4-year degree, a borrower may have as much as $165,000, $200,000 of Parent Plus loans. Usually it's about close to $100,000 a year. So they've now capped Parent Plus loans at $20,000 a year and $65,000 for the life of for that particular student. Total, a parent can only get $65,000 total in Parent Plus loans. To give you a comparison, about a week ago, I reviewed someone's Parent Plus loans. They had a Parent Plus loan for $21,000 for one semester. A reasonable person would suspect this is an attempt to push people towards private loans as opposed to the federal market. $65,000 on average isn't enough for a 4-year degree. Parent Plus loans will no longer be able to be enrolled in qualified plans, which almost always result in a lower monthly payment. They're based on what you yourself make, a percentage of your discretionary income. In theory, they should always be affordable for the borrowers. That's going away. There will be millions and millions of Americans potentially that will not be able to afford their payments with Parent Plus loans. Parent Plus loans, as well as graduate loans and the older FIFO loans, they typically have really high interest rates, especially comparatively. Parent Plus loans, while undergraduate loans for a student that took out their own loans, they'll typically double over the course of repayment before they're able to be repaid. Parent Plus loans will triple, and they'll no longer be eligible for qualified plans, which means you'll end up paying on average, not everyone, but on average, 3 times what you actually borrowed without the possibility of forgiveness. If you have Parent Plus loans, now is the time to safeguard them against what's coming before it's too late. This will be a much harder repayment period without the possibility of forgiveness for Parent Plus loans. As I mentioned, all the qualified plans are going away. The recent budget bill is phasing them out in favor of the RAP plan. You are able, however, through a loophole, to be able to grandfather yourself into the original qualified plan to safeguard against what's coming. I would suggest everyone at least test that possibility. The RAP plan may work for some people. It may work out even better for some borrowers, but the overwhelming opinion of most experts is that it will not be as favorable to borrowers. So one of the things that the budget bill did is it stripped away, before the qualified plans are phased out, it stripped away some of the protections or some of the rules. Actually, they aren't all protections. One of those is actually advantageous for borrowers. There was a hardship rule on one of the qualified plans that if you made over a certain amount, you weren't able to access it. That's gone. So that's good for borrowers with higher incomes. Sometimes a higher income can drive a payment to be unaffordable. That because of that hardship rule, that was removed. Parent Plus loans, which we just discussed, will now be excluded once the RAP plan takes effect from all student loan forgiveness. I cannot stress this enough. If you have Parent Plus loans, you need to be safeguarded against what's coming. Use the link in the top right corner, schedule a loan review, and we'll be able to be more specific with your loans. But everyone with Parent Plus loans, myself included, needs to safeguard themselves before they're excluded from forgiveness. We mentioned already payments under the RAP plan, or maybe we didn't. This is a good time to mention it. Although the RAP plan, by all accounts, will not be as favorable to borrowers, the good thing is the payments you've already made, except for those with Parent Plus loans, towards forgiveness or public service loan forgiveness, more specifically, you won't lose any time. They will count once that transition to the RAP plan happens.
How do I know if I need to recertify income or re-enroll? And what happens if I miss the deadline?
That's an excellent question. All qualified plans are technically for 12 months at a time. They have to be recertified every year. If you do not recertify your plan, they take that payment price away from you. They give you a standard repayment price, which is not a qualified payment. I'll repeat that. It is not a qualified payment. So you're no longer in a qualified plan. You're no longer making qualified payments, which means your road to student loan forgiveness has stopped. Public service loan forgiveness, they do not keep a rolling count of qualified time. Public service loan forgiveness, most people don't know this. You both have to be enrolled into the program and you have to recertify that time every single year. So both your plan and your program must be recertified annually.
I enrolled into an income-driven payment plan in July, or I thought I did, but I haven't heard anything and my payments are still the same. Is this something you could help with?
Yes, absolutely. Have your loans reviewed, but that's very typical, especially now. And we try to be extraordinarily careful as to remain apolitical. Student loans don't have a political preference, if you will. Unfortunately, Washington doesn't do the same thing. Things are extraordinarily political right now. As a matter of fact, we just found out through a court proceeding and a Freedom of Information Act that behind the scenes, the Department of Education has simply just stopped processing student loan forgiveness, and the courts had to make them process student loan forgiveness. The law is very clear when it comes to that. Absolutely, we'll be able to help schedule a loan review. We'll take a look and we'll be very upfront about it. But politics is affecting the student loan programs in a way that they normally do not. Not to say that's what happened with your loans. It could have been a number of things, as well as far as loan numbers or loan types or the years they were dispersed. But we'll be happy to take a look and see if we can make sense of it.
Where do I check my loan type and my repayment plan to make sure I'm in the right one?
So anyone who's ever spoken to me or seen one of our webinars, they'll know I'm not a fan of the servicers. So I feel bad for even directing you to your servicer's website. But that's where that information would be. It'll tell you what plan repayment program you're in or what type of loan you have and the like. Now, I'm quite sure it'll be pretty nonsensical or hard to find, but that's where you would go.
Will the SAVE payments count towards the public service loan forgiveness?
Payments made prior to July 18th, 2024, yes. Nothing after.
What are the salary thresholds that determine the monthly payments? I've been paying $0 a month, but want to know what will happen if my salary increases.
If your salary increases, you could expect, it's pretty likely your payment would increase. I'm hesitating because I don't want to answer that question. There are things missing: your family size, um, the way they calculate the payment. Um, so it's likely, or you should expect, if your income increases, your payments might. But depending on your family size, they may balance each other out. Have your loans review. We'll be able to tell you if your payments will go up. But it usually, from an increase in pay, your payments will go up in theory, but it isn't always the case. So when we say student loan forgiveness, what do we mean? Student loan forgiveness says that you have to make a requisite number of payments, either 120 qualified payments for public service loan forgiveness, currently 240 qualified payments for student loan forgiveness, in the near future, 360 qualified payments for student loan forgiveness, or 10, 20, or 30 years. You must have federal loans. These are federal programs. There's no such thing as private student loan forgiveness. Those loans must be direct loans, not Parent Plus loans or FIFO loans, or Perkins loans. None of those loans qualify for forgiveness. Presently, they all can be made to qualify relatively soon. If Parent Plus loans aren't already grandfathered into the program, they will no longer qualify for any type of forgiveness. Um, when we say 120, 240, or 360 qualified payments, what we mean is full on time payments while in a qualified plan. And for those who qualify for public service loan forgiveness, you must also be in a qualified position. They'll say you have to work full time for public service loan forgiveness, but the program only dictates you work 30 hours on average. Both your plan and for those that qualify for public service loan forgiveness, they must be recertified every year. I can't stress this enough for qualified plans, whether it's public service loan forgiveness or student loan forgiveness. 90% of people that mess their plans up is because they either didn't know about recertification, which is the most likely. The servicers are notorious for not telling people about recertification. Fed loan lost their federal privileges in part because of that. Um, or they simply forget to recertify. Qualified plans must be recertified every year. And the same thing for public service loan forgiveness. You have to certify your qualified time every year.
You just hit a chord because we got three questions simultaneously about missing payments. So I'll read one, but they were all of the similar vein. I applied for PSLF forgiveness on August of this year. My qualifying payments are missing from the periods of September 2024 through June of 25. I've requested a reconsideration to account payments. The problem seems to be between MOHELA and financial aid. Is there a solution?
The likely is I need a lot more information to give you a good answer, have your loans review, but it could be a number of things. It could be one of the servicers you previously had no longer services federal student loans. It's your servicer that reports qualified payments to the Department of Education. If they don't exist, there's nobody to report that qualified time. It has to be found. It's extraordinarily frustrating trying to find it. It could be, it sounds like, that you either still are or were in a SAVE plan. A time frame is making me think SAVE plan. There could be a number of reasons. I would have to look at your loans and go through the history of them from the time they were dispersed until today, especially that time frame, to kind of pinpoint what the issue is and see if it's something that's rectifiable.
You may have answered this, but I bet a lot of people have this question. I'm currently on the SAVE plan and have over 100 qualified payments. Am I going to lose all those when I move to the WRAP plan?
No, you aren't going to lose those payments. However, you've already lost over a year of qualified time already, which means if you have 100 qualified payments, I've probably reviewed over 10,000 loans. 98% of people that qualify for this program, they don't get it. When I say virtually no one gets qualified time on their own, let alone 100 qualified payments, you know how difficult it was to come by them. You could be at 112 qualified payments, which means you're within your recertification period of forgiveness. You could make all 8 of those payments, could have made all 8 of those payments presently if it's financially feasible, and apply for your forgiveness. Have been done with it and not even had to worry about the RAP plan. You're someone that needs a loan review, or rather need out of the SAVE plan sooner rather than later. Don't waste any qualified time. It's hard enough to get it. So when we say qualified plans, qualified plans are income-driven repayment plans that soon to be the RAP plan. They're based on your discretionary income, as I mentioned before. There are factors like your adjusted gross income, your family size, the poverty line, and the state that you're in. They'll calculate that divided by 12 because they're for 12 months. And it'll be a percentage of that number, which means in theory, they'll always be affordable for borrowers. This was in response to tens of millions of Americans going into default and not being able to afford their student loan payments. They're for a specific amount of time, meaning there's a hard stop. Once you make your requisite payments, you have fulfilled your legal obligation to federal student loans. That's how the government words it. And everything that's left, it doesn't matter if it's 10,000 or 100,000 or $1 million, it'll all be forgiven currently federally tax-free. We had a client not too long ago that hadn't missed a student loan payment since the 90s, and their loans had tripled from around 250,000, almost tripled, from around 250,000 to over 680,000. However, this person qualified for public service loan forgiveness and should have been enrolled in the program in 2008. Long story short, their loans were forgivable, and we were able to get that amount forgiven. But without them initiating that loan review, they would have paid their student loans for the rest of their life, and they had never missed a payment since the 90s. That could have been a heartbreaking situation. Don't be caught in a situation where you've overpaid for over a decade. In the spring, especially around May 5th, there was a lot of talk about that May 5th deadline, or what May 5th meant. So take a step back for a moment. Between March of 2020 and November 2024, student loans had first went into forbearance due to COVID-19, and then there was an off-ramp period to get people ready for the return of student loan payments. In November, though, they were not reporting missed payments. They were not reporting defaulted loans. They were not collecting on garnishments, until May 5th. What does that mean? A defaulted loan is a loan that you've defaulted on the repayment plan. You agreed to repay your loans. You've not made a payment in over 270 consecutive days. I say consecutive, I'm sorry, because it's normally consecutive, but they are counting the time. They are counting the time before student loans went into forbearance in March of 2020. So if you were behind then and you still haven't made a payment since they've been into repayment, it's very likely your loans are in default. Once loans go into default, you lose your federal privileges, meaning you're no longer able to get student loans. If you're someone that gets an income tax return, they'll offset that income tax return, meaning they'll take the whole thing. Your loans are no longer with the Department of Education. They're with a collection company. This collection company is charging you 24% interest, 18% compounded every day. And that isn't even the worst case scenario. Worst case is what comes next. The final stage of default is garnishment. There's an actual an actual judgment against you in a court of law. They'll garnish 15% of every taxable income you receive. not just wages, whether it's employment income, unemployment, investment income. If it's taxable, they'll take 15% of it first for the foreseeable future. It's extremely difficult and extremely expensive to get out of garnishment. Um, don't let yourself fall into garnishment. While we are able to help with garnishment, if I'm being honest, it is a frustrating and irritating process. If you think your loans are defaulted, now is the time to bring them back to good standing.
I just found out that my loans are in default. What is the fastest way to get out of default, and which one gets me into an affordable repayment program?
It depends on your loan type, when they were dispersed, and the like. The collection companies will only tell you about a 9-month rehabilitation program where you negotiate a fair and reasonable payment that you have to make for 9 consecutive months. The problem is they're a collection company. They're able to resell that up until after the fifth payment. Then you'll have to find which collection company now has it, come into a whole new rehabilitation program from day one, and hope they don't do the same thing again. I would have my loans reviewed immediately. Default is nothing you want to let sit or breathe or take time with. You want to get out of default as soon as possible. That would be our primary concern.
Advantage told me my loans are current. That's my loan servicer, but I haven't made a payment in months. Is this because my loans are in forbearance, or am I about to go into default?
It could be any of the above if that's what your servicer told you. Um, Most people on this call have likely called their servicer. You'll know better than me. You could speak to 4 people and get 16 different answers. I would have to look at your loans myself or one of our advisors to see why you haven't had a payment. You may be in a save forbearance, you may have a $0 a month payment, or you may be about to fall into default or already defaulted on your loans. Have your loans reviewed and we'll be a lot more specific.
I took out loans for my daughter, and those loans are now in default. Can I get on an income-based plan, or are there different rules for Parent Plus loans?
So if you didn't hear what we went over with Parent Plus loans, it's one of the things that I'm pulling my hair out about and keeping me up at night. First, you need to be out of default immediately. Parent Plus loans already have really high interest rates, 24%, 18% compounded daily. I've seen Parent Plus loans triple from the time they went into default until they came out. Secondarily, um, they don't qualify on their own for forgiveness. They have to be made to qualify. And you need to be grandfathered in before the introduction of the RAP plan. Otherwise, you'll no longer qualify for forgiveness at all. Those Parent Plus loans would definitely be our primary concern. You need to have your loans reviewed as soon as humanly possible. So one of the things that was supposed to be an answer for those stuck in that saved limbo or saved forbearance is a buyback program. A buyback program for public service loan forgiveness is essentially you petitioning the Department of Education saying, look, I was in deferment or I was in forbearance when I should not have been. I'd like to buy that time back. They'll calculate a payment where you can make one lump sum payment and convert that non-qualified time into qualified time. And you have to make that payment within 90 days of them making the offer. The reason I say supposed to is this is actually one of the things that came out in a Freedom of Information Act in a court proceeding, that they were not actually making offers, buyback offers for people that were in the SAVE plan, even though they're supposed to. I'm someone that's skeptical of buyback time for SAVE, although it is a possibility. And if it works, and if they actually make the offer, it's an excellent way to convert non-qualified time into qualified time.
How do I know if I'm eligible for a PSLF buyback, and is it worth pursuing?
It's definitely worth pursuing. Whether or not you qualify for it, it depends on your loan type, the plan you're in, what period of time you're attempting to buy back. it is a process as the federal government. They don't tend to make anything as straightforward as it could be, but it's definitely worth looking into. Have your loans reviewed. We'll see what time you want to buy back and go over your options that are specific to your loans, but it's most certainly worth the effort.
Do the months spent in SAVE plan that didn't qualify for public service loan forgiveness qualify for buyback?
In theory, yes. In practice, it doesn't appear so. Um, but things change. The courts do force the government to uphold things sometimes. It's worth the hassle, if that makes sense. So, one of my favorite programs, and I think one of the questioners alluded to it earlier, is a temporary extended public service loan forgiveness application. It's very similar to SAVE, but you don't have, or excuse me, to the buyback program, but you don't have to buy anything back. It's essentially doing the same thing, petitioning the Department of Education and about non-qualified time being converted into qualified time. The difference is this one depends on the plans you are in. Only certain plans qualify for a temporary extended public service loan forgiveness request. But as I mentioned earlier, 98% of people that qualify for public service loan forgiveness never get it. The ones that do, it's usually through a temporary extended public service loan forgiveness request. I love TEPSLF. We use this every single day, every day.
If I have a loan review with one of your advisors, what information do I have to bring with me? I think I might qualify for this program.
All you really need is your login for the Department of Education's website, studentaid.gov, not your servicer's website, which in my opinion are usually really nonsensical, but studentaid.gov. So, as I mentioned, and I'll keep mentioning, 98% of people that qualify for public service loan forgiveness and forgiveness programs never get it. Usually, in my opinion, there are servicer issues. While we pay the servicers tens of millions of dollars of our tax money to service our student loans, they say things on a public record like Mohila did, that student loan forgiveness is not in their best interest because they think they lose money when loans are forgiven. It was the servicers who told people during COVID they didn't need to recertify, which they did. Currently, I've seen a few letters telling people not to recertify till 2027, which almost blew my mind the first time I read it. That is not how qualified plans work. Qualified plans are technically only for 12 months at a time. They must be recertified annually, or you're not making qualified payments. Examples like that are the biggest hurdle to student loan forgiveness. But there are also borrower qualification issues. You're not in the right plan to qualify for your program, or you don't have the right loan type. There's also administrative difficulties, which we're experiencing abundance now after the changing of administrations in January. It could be a number of reasons, but they're all overcome. You're able to overcome them all. I almost said overcome a bow. I don't even think that's a word. But you're able to overcome them all. Whatever the issue is, there's usually a way around it, whether it's utilizing a loophole or just making sure your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed, so to speak.
Can I fix past mistakes if I was in the wrong repayment plan?
It depends on the repayment plan. Usually, yes, but it depends on what payment plan you were in. If you were not in a qualified plan, not likely, but it would depend on your loan type, the plan you were in, the years your loans were dispersed. But maybe.
I submitted my PSLF form, but my qualifying payment count dropped after my loan servicer changed. What happened?
I can imagine that happened. This is actually one of the bigger hurdles to student loan forgiveness. I explained it earlier, but I'll reiterate. It's your servicer who reports qualified payments. If your servicer is no longer in existence, then there's no one to report those qualified payments. I've seen people lose years of qualified time because of this issue. It's extraordinarily frustrating finding that time, but it is possible.
If my employer is a nonprofit hospital, but my paycheck comes from our for-profit management company, does that disqualify me?
The shorter answer is yes. The real answer is it depends on what state you're in. Some states have realized this and have corrected this loophole or closed this loophole faster than others. The short answer is yes, it depends on who pays you. But the better answer is it depends on the state that you're in.
I am in a save forbearance. What do I do so I can get to the
Get
PSLF?
out of it.
Okay, continuation, 97 payments. Okay. How do I know if my loans have been recertified? How to recertify? Basically, how does she know if her loans were recertified?
They haven't been. If you're asking that question, they haven't been recertified. Um, and it's likely because of the budget bill. Not only do they need to be recertified, but they also need to be changed, or rather grandfathered against what's coming. Uh, you'd know if you recertified your plan. Um, Most people don't even know recertification is a thing, so it's likely you have not. But you would know if you did. Have your loans reviewed, and we'll be able to be a lot more specific, which actually was a perfect segue, excuse me, as to what it is we're able to do to help. One thing is we'll tell you if your plan has ever been recertified or not. But what we do is we'll review your loans. That's the first thing we want to do. Without reviewing your loans, we're just speculating, which we would prefer not to do. We'll tell you what stood out to us, if anything. We'll make a suggestion as to what you should do, and we'll run a projection based on that suggestion. At that point, you're free to take the information we've already given you and do those things yourself, or you can hire us to do it for you, whether it's loan consolidation or enrollment into a qualified plan, or if you just need an affordable payment so that you can make your monthly payments. If you're someone that has never recertified, which 90% of people in plans that require recertification have not. Public service loan forgiveness, if you're missing time or you've never been enrolled into the program or you want to know how much time you should have left, we'll be happy to do so. We also offer ongoing services. We'll do your recertifications every month, or excuse me, every year. We'll recertify your public service loan forgiveness every year. If something like this happened when a SAVE plan was thrown out, we'll reach out to you and make sure you're on a plan where you're able to make qualified payments. We'll apply for your student loan forgiveness or your public service loan forgiveness. We'll appeal if it's denied, as well as Parent Plus loans. We'll safeguard them and grandfather them into the forgiveness programs. Discharges, whether, excuse me, it's a disability discharge, which is sticking around, or one of the discharge programs that are going away. Feel free to scan the link here, and we'll take a look and tell you everything you need to know about your personal student loans.
Aaron, here's a good question that's come in. I don't think you've ever been asked this. What's the number one mistake borrowers make that causes them to lose out on forgiveness?
Um, there's two. They either have never been in a qualified plan or never recertified that qualified plan. But the quiet one, there are bigger ones, but this is the one that most people never even heard of. You have to make full on time payments. If your due date is the 5th, they do give you a 10-day grace period. But for the sake of argument, if your due date is the 5th and you make that payment, well, let's say the 16th, it isn't a month late. It isn't 270 consecutive days for default. It isn't even 90 for delinquent, but it's not a qualified payment. Most people don't know how qualified payments work in order to make them each and every month.
It's interesting you said that because a question came in that we didn't get to, but now I will get to it. Do late or partial payments to disqualify months for public service loan forgiveness, even if they were made through auto pay?
Absolutely, they do. Absolutely, they do. Late or partial payments will not count towards the forgiveness of student loans. There's a loophole that can be utilized later on when you're ready to have your loans forgiven. But no, to answer your question directly, they do not.
We're coming up against the end of time, but one question just came in that we haven't really touched on. It's about disability discharge. Can you give a 1 minute overview on that?
If you've been diagnosed as either 100% disabled, um, or totally disabled by your doctor, the military, or the Social Security office, you qualify for a disability discharge, meaning all of your loans will be discharged or paid by the Treasury. They'll be forgiven. It's a different process than forgiveness, but a good layman term is forgiven if you are totally or 100% disabled.
Okay, last one. I said the last one was last one, but this is another good one. I have 3 loans. 2 are close to 120 payments. Can I get those 2 loans forgiven, or do all 3 have to reach 120?
So you can get the 2 forgiven, but it's likely or it's possible that you can give enough time to the third loan where they're all close enough not to make a difference. But it is possible to have the 2 out of the 3 forgiven. It's not advisable, or there's nothing wrong with it, but you may be able to get them all forgiven together, is what I'm trying to say. But yes, you're able to do 2 out of 3 and then put the third on the road to forgiveness.
So we are going to stop it there. I know there's more questions coming in, but here is the QR code. I sent a couple people who asked questions a link, so you don't have to take the QR code, but we are going to send a recording of this presentation and a link to sign up for a loan review, as well as to register for next month's webinar, to everybody who registered for this one. So Aaron, that was great. Once again, thank you, and thank you all who participated today, and have a great rest of your day.